Good afternoon, everyone. Call the meeting to order. First item of business is Senate Bill 67. Revisor Wagner, are you on?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, committee. Senate Bill 67 would amend the statutory definitions of all-terrain vehicles and recreational off-highway vehicles. So the new definitions would be for all-terrain vehicles, they'll now be defined as any motorized non-highway vehicle up to 55 inches, which that's an increase from 50 inches under current law. And then the new definition specifies that the width for the ATV is measured from the outside of one tire rim to the outside of the other tire rim. Then additionally, a similar change is made for recreational off-highway vehicles. That would define those as any motor vehicle up to 75 inches in width, which is increased from 64 inches, and similarly measured from the outside of one tire rim to the outside of the other tire rim. And then the dry weight on ROVs for this definition will be increased from 2,000 pounds to 3,500 pounds. And I'd answer any questions the committee has.
Are there any questions for the revisor? Representative Delperdang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for going through the bill on us. The curiosity I've got is, I guess in writing the bill, I don't know if it was you that actually put it together or what, but why is the measurement specifically from tire rim to tire rim versus the vehicle itself?
That might be a better question for the proponent. I know my understanding was this is to put these vehicles more in line with industry standards, but I'm not exactly sure why they chose to measure it from tire to tire.
Okay, what I was leading to, I don't know if you're familiar with SEMA, Special Equipment Marketing Association, but I've got an ATV. I've got aftermarket wheels on it. So due to the offset, it kicks it out a few inches on each side. So it possibly puts it beyond this. So I don't know what the ramifications are of such.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, the width is increasing. So and rather than decreasing, that doesn't necessarily answer your question, but.
No, but if it's outside the limit, is it, I just cannot sell it as a new vehicle, or is it now suddenly illegal within the state? I'm
not entirely sure, other than it wouldn't meet the definition of ATVs. So some of the rules and statutes that apply to ATVs, such as no registration or titling, may be ineffective.
All right, thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to our proponents. First, we have Mr. Adam Lusker on behalf of Polaris Incorporated. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to be back here again today. Thank you, committee. I'm Adam Lusker with Federico Durst Consulting, here on behalf of Senate Bill 67. Senate Bill 67 changes the definition, as you heard from the revisor, of ATVs, all-terrain vehicles, and ROVs, recreational off-road vehicles, in Kansas statute. The revisor told you exactly what those changes are. On the ATVs, or four-wheelers, it adds 5 inches in width and defines, and I'll defer that question that Representative Delperdang had to our next conferees with the industry. And then on the ROVs, it increases the width at 9 inches and also adds weight to accommodate for some new technology coming out in the industry. This bill will align the definition in Kansas statute with the new industry standards, which are transforming to meet consumer needs. It increases safety, it addresses agriculture and sportsmen's needs, and it keeps pace with which we found out, the increasingly giant outdoor economy in Kansas. With us today is a representative from Polaris Incorporated, J.R. Burke, and he'll speak directly to some of your concerns and answer some questions. And if there are any questions for me, Mr. Chairman, I'd be glad to answer them at the appropriate time. So with that, I thank you and thank the committee.
Okay, are there any questions for Adam? See none, thank you.
Thank you. And our next two conferees are remote, so
right.
I think they're on the screen.
Next, we have Mr. J.R. Burke, Director of State Government Affairs for Polaris Incorporated. Welcome to the committee.
Yes. Thank you, Chairman Preo. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Great. Well, thank you, Chairman and members of the committee for the chance to visit with you today and testify in support of Senate Bill 67. As was mentioned by the reviser and Adam, the bill updates all-terrain vehicle and recreational off-highway vehicle definitions. So for those of you who aren't as familiar with this is the traditional straddle seat four-wheelers and then the side-by-sides, or UTVs as they're sometimes referred to. Adam mentioned that the outdoor economy is very strong in the state of Kansas. The Federal Bureau of Economic Analysis suggests that about 40,000 jobs, $1.5 billion in wages, and $3.3 billion in state GDP from the outdoor economy in Kansas, of which power sports, including off-roading, is a top 5 contributor. So this legislation is timely in order to make sure that any barriers to economic activity in Kansas is not hindered. So this is an important and timely bill. In addition, many states across the country are either in the process of or already have done, which is proposed by this bill. In 2020, the state of Missouri and Indiana both updated their state ATV and ROV laws similar to what this bill does. In this 2021 year, states like Alabama, Tennessee, Illinois, Wisconsin, and Minnesota also have legislation that would do the same. So we're not breaking new ground. We're just making sure that the state of Kansas is at the forefront of this trend. And really, this bill was brought forward because of the significant innovation that's happened in this space over the last few years, including most recently electrification, which is coming, which is one of the rationales behind the increase in weight. So as you can imagine, going from an internal combustion engine to an electrified engine, and to get our customers the type of range and such that they need and durability that they need, there's going to come some weight increases. So in addition to this, while Polaris is a proponent, there are also other manufacturers who would also benefit from this, who are also in this space where the current definitions under state statute just are already being exceeded, or as new innovation comes onto the market will continue to exceed. So this is a really important industry development and certainly something that we appreciate yourselves and your fellow members in the Senate looking closely at. The other thing that I'd mention is that we have 23 dealer partners across the state that retail these ATVs and ROVs, and I believe one of them, Jay Hetfield, is also on the line, where he can speak directly to his business. But Polaris's job is to deliver new ideas and innovation to the marketplace that customers, to Jay Hetfield and his colleague dealers, have customers to sell to. And so this is really a partnership with those local independently owned small businesses that we work with to deliver this innovation into the marketplace. And it certainly benefits his customers. So as they look at recreating outside of the borders of Kansas, or if you have Missourians, for instance, coming into the state of Kansas to recreate, that there's consistency across state lines as well. So those are all very important factors to this legislation. And so I'll leave it at that. I think really the best comments are really left to Jay, because he is really the voice of the products that we're talking about here at the local level. And I'm really pleased that he's been able to join us today. Certainly have, if there are questions I can answer for yourself or members of the committee, I'm happy to do that. I've been working on these issues across the many states for nearly a decade, so I'm quite familiar with some of the questions that might come around, and I'm happy to answer your questions. I certainly appreciate you and your colleagues, Mr. Chairman, for taking this bill up, and I certainly hope that you'll support it. Thank you.
Delberding has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Burke, you actually are with Polaris?
Representative, yes, that's correct.
Okay, I was just curiosity if, does Polaris have, or is there any funding available for them from Polaris specifically to help set up riding areas within the state of Kansas? Or are there any that exist today?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, that is a good question. And yes, in fact, Polaris has a very robust grants program that it runs out of its business through our foundation. We work with local nonprofits to make investments in trail riding areas, whether public or private, across the country. I don't know of any pending projects that we have in Kansas, but that certainly is something that we do work on regularly with local stakeholders.
And then if I may, for a second question, I had asked the reviser, I don't know if you were on here at the time, but is it industry standards to measure from wheel rim to wheel rim as far as width on these versus the actual chassis?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Representative, yes, that's exactly right. So there are a number of states that have already adopted that measurement specification, which is consistent with industry standards, which conform with some of our federal obligations under Consumer Product Safety Improvement Act and things of that nature. So it gives, because of the unique situation that you mentioned with aftermarket parts, it creates a scenario where when the product is registered at the point of sale or otherwise, they're registering it to the OEM specification. And so that would make sure that it could be properly registered, and that's kind of the purpose behind that. You know, the other thing I would say is you have multiple OEMs that are, you know, subject to these laws. So it's not just Polaris, it's BRP and, you know, Arcticat and Deere and others. And so the rim specifications are really that one unique standard that we all adhere to at manufacturer and ultimately distribution into our distribution channels that we can rely on as a consistent standard around measurement.
Thank you.
Representative Hilkerson.
Thank you. Do you make a model that conforms with Kansas statute now?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, yes, we do. We have a number of them that do conform with Kansas statute today. We do have a number of them that do not, and we anticipate there will be more. As I mentioned, we go into electrification. And I'll give you just a quick for instance. So we have a Ranger, which is a utility side-by-side, which is used for work and increasingly for recreation. So it's a multi-purpose machine. There are those we have machines that come fully equipped with the cab and those that come not equipped with a cab. One under Kansas law today is legal, the one without the cab, but with the cab, it increases the weight above that restriction. So they're similarly purpose-built. They touch the land the same. Everything is the exact same, with the exception of the weight, which is increased because it has that additional cab, which, as you can imagine, particularly during colder weather months and with the dust and so on and so forth, our farming and ranching customers, as well as riders themselves, those who like to go out on the trails and ride, increasingly want.
Second question, is this designed for road and highway use?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, these products are not originally manufactured for on-road use. They're off-road vehicles. So for instance, they have low pressure lugged tires primarily at manufacture, which perform very differently than high pressure, flat treaded tires do on pavement and things of that nature. So our owner's manuals, the warning labels on the machines and so on and so forth warn customers against using on paved surfaces.
So I'm assuming then you notify prospective buyers not to use these on roadways, highways, and that if they are doing that, they're risking their own lives.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, yes, as I mentioned, Polaris, along with essentially the entire industry, has been very clear that our position is that these are designed for off-road use and should be used as such. The warning labels on the machines, as I mentioned, in our owner's manuals online. Even if you look at our marketing, we're very clear about that and how the machines are used so that there's not any distance between our position and the way that we feel customers should properly use these machines. So yes, you're absolutely right. Individual behavior is distinct in some instances from what we would recommend. So they do so at their own risk.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Are there further questions? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Burke. We appreciate it. Next up, we have Mr. Jay Hatfield, owner of Jay Hatfield Motorsports. Welcome to the committee. Are you there, Mr. Hatfield? Okay.
Difficulty. How about that?
There we go.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem.
Got to click another button on the computer to make it work. Oh, okay, well, thank you very much for allowing me to attend the hearing. I'm representing this from the Kansas business owner standpoint and from a retailer standpoint. So this industry has changed dramatically. I've been a dealer for 16 years, representing Polaris and other brands, and there's been a huge change in the entire industry, the size of the units, the use of the units, so on and so forth. The one thing that's common about this industry, though, is from the perspective of Kansas needing to stay progressive and stay within the other, we need to stay equivalent to what other states are authorizing these manufacturers to build and register in the state, because these customers travel, and they travel well. They travel multiple states to go buy what they want. So if a particular unit that Polaris builds is not available to be sold and distributed in Kansas, but available in Oklahoma or Tennessee or somewhere like that, that customer is definitely going to drive there. If they do, they're going to return to the state, and that's the only, that allows the state to completely lose control of who owns what or what, so on and so forth. I mean, we don't know, the state wouldn't know if that customer registered or paid tax or anything. So having the ability to equally retail the same units as the other states in the country at least gives the state of Kansas the opportunity to know who's buying and who's registering within the state. And then also, it's obvious from business standpoint, if we don't have those units to sell, we employ quite a few people. We have 2 motorsports in the state, 2 motorsports stores in the state, one in southeast Kansas in Pittsburgh, and the other one here in Wichita, where I'm at today. So we employ a lot of people, and I think it's very important that we stay in line with what the other states around us are allowing to be sold. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Hatfield? Representative Minix.
Jay, is the Polaris North Star 1000 legal for sale in the state of Kansas right now?
Well, a North Star being a cab unit, from what Mr. Burke just said, it must be over the weight limit. I'd have to defer back to him to answer that from Polaris' standpoint. I mean, they're distributed in the state of Kansas to be sold. But I would need to defer that question back to JR.
I'm aware there's a lot of them out there, and they're used for a variety of things. I know there's lots of calf operations right now running machines like that, and I was just curious as to whether they're legal in the state of Kansas. Thank you, Mr.
I'll answer
Chairman.
it's the most popular unit that we carry right now.
Any other questions for Mr. Hatfield? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Burke, did you wish to weigh in on Representative Minnick's question?
Yes, Chairman Prill, Representative Mix, it's a great question, and it is legal to sell and retail the machines in Kansas. What this law really does is provides for the opportunity for those machines to be properly registered so that they can be used off of private property if desired by the customer. So it is legal to retail for use on private land unless it meets the definition, then it would technically not be properly registered for use for private or public recreational use.
Thank you. Further questions for either of the proponents? Representative Ballard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want a clarification. He says it can be used off. So is it illegal or is it legal for them to use this off of private property?
Mr. Burke, did you hear the question?
Yes, Chairman Prail, thank you. Representative, yeah, so I'll give you just a quick for instance. So if the machine is over the 2,000 pound limit, which this particular unit is, when the individual registers the machine or buys a trail pass, whether it's on state recreation or maybe on Army Corps of Engineer land, which there's a fair amount of in the state of Kansas where there are trails to ride, the machine technically would not be able to receive that trail pass or that registration to be used on that property. So whereas when they purchase the machine from someone like Mr. Hetfield, takes it home, uses it on their own private land or another's private land. There are a number of private parks in Kansas where individuals can ride. They are still able to be operated there, but in places where it is publicly managed land, it technically is not able to be operated there.
You answered my question. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are there any further questions? Seeing none. Committee, I would bring your attention to written testimony, but I see Mr. Donnelly is here. Did you change your mind and want to speak? Okay, there's written testimony in support of Senate Bill 67 by Mr. John Donnelly, the Kansas Farm Bureau. I would bring that to your attention and wish you would look at that. I have no other proponents listed. Does anyone else wish to speak as a proponent? See none. I have no opponents listed. Does anyone wish to speak as an opponent? See none, move on to neutral, and I would bring your attention to written testimony by Wendy Sark, a research associate with League of Kansas Municipalities. With that, we'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 67 and open the hearing on Senate Bill 95. Supervisor Wagner, would you brief us, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee, Senate Bill 95 would exempt motor vehicle odometer reading recording requirements when such recording requirements are exempted by federal law. So under current law in KSA 8-135, on a reassignment of title, the odometer reading is recorded on the certificate of title. There are certain vehicles exempt under current law from that recording requirement, and the current exemption is for vehicles that are 10 model years or older, and trucks with a gross vehicle weight of more than 16,000 pounds. That exemption from Senate Bill 95 would instead read, and you can find this on page 3, lines 16 through 21, that it would exempt any vehicles from odometer recording requirements if those vehicles are exempt from the recording under federal law. And as an additional note, the provisions of this bill do not become effective until January 1 of 2022. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions of the reviser? Representative Proctor.
Yeah, for the reviser, thank you, Mr. Chairman. What are those circumstances when it's exempt under federal law?
I know that this was due, like the impetus for the change was this was due to a change in federal ruling. I think the new federal rule requires disclosure for any model year after 2011 for up to 20 years. So if the vehicle falls outside that range, they would be exempted.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please.
On page 2 of the subnote, there's some information about the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration regulation that this bill would allow the state to comply with.
Thank you, Jill. Representative Del Perdang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It talks about on page 3, lines 20 through 23, roughly, it gets into some of the changes there, but it talks about vehicle for which it is issued has been titled previously as an on-highway vehicle or salvage vehicle. So if I have a vehicle that's been either in a wreck or in this case of discussion, I'll say hailed on, and it's totaled out by the insurance company, is it considered a salvage vehicle? And if which case, I think you can still go in and possibly fix these up and retitle them, so to speak, for road use. How does that affect this?
I don't think there should be any effect on salvage vehicles. I would let the division answer that if I'm wrong, but yeah, it's just mainly recording requirements for certificate of titles. It's not affecting anything for the salvage vehicle process.
But if I brought a vehicle, say it was a hail damaged vehicle, and I bought the thing up from the insurance company, it's got a salvage title, I decide to fix the bodywork on it. So is it now exempt from mileage concerns on the future titling?
I don't believe so. I don't think, I don't know if I'm understanding your question maybe, but salvage vehicles wouldn't be exempt necessarily from these recording requirements.
Take a look, if you would, on page 3 of the bill, and specifically line 22. Maybe I'm reading that wrong.
So yeah, I mean, the certificate of title has to indicate whether it's been a salvage vehicle, but that's separate. That's a separate kind of recording from the mileage. This is just dealing with odometer mileage, not whether the vehicle was a salvage vehicle.
Okay, I'm still not missing it, but I'll take it up later. Thank you.
Any further questions for the reviser? Seeing none, we'll move on to our proponents. Ms. Leanne Phelps of Kansas Department of Revenue. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Prail and members of House Transportation. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today as a proponent on Senate Bill 95. We are simply just trying to align the state law with changes that have been made to the federal odometer requirements rule. That those changes were made back in the fall of 2019 and took effect in federal law in January of 2021. The rule as it stood prior to the change were vehicles that were 10 years old or older required a disclosure of odometer reading between a buyer and a seller. The change that they made is kind of a rolling change. It will progress for about 10 years, each year adding a model year to the new requirement of disclosure being required for 20 years, for the beginning with model years 2011. And so that simply states the change that we're looking to make. I thought it might be more simple to just word it to say that it would conform with the federal rule, but that's what we're trying to do. So that's pretty much it, and I would be happy to stand for questions.
Are there questions? Are there any questions for Ms. Phelps? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Committee, I have no other proponents listed. Is there anyone else wishing to speak as a proponent? I have no opponents and no neutral. Does anyone wish to speak as an opponent or neutral? Hearing none, we'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 95 and open the hearing on Senate Bill 99. Revisor Wagner, would you brief us, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee's Senate Bill 99 would increase the bond amount required for licensed new and used vehicle dealers. Current law requires that every applicant or licensee who applies to be a used or is currently a user or new vehicle dealer to maintain a corporate surety bond in a form and amount required by the Director of Vehicles. That current bond amount is $30,000. Senate Bill 99 would increase that bond amount to $50,000. Similarly, as the last bill, the provisions won't become effective until January 1 of 2022. And I'd answer any questions the committee has.
Are there questions for the reviser? Representative Delperdang.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Chairman. On these bonds, is it just an individual dealer? Do they have one bond for that amount? Or is it based on how many vehicles they sell? In other words, what I was looking at is you get a dealer that's dealing in 100 vehicles a month. Be easy for them to have half a dozen or so that may have issues that may require this bond. But it may already be, I understand we're just raising the dollar amount from 30 to 50K, but I was just curious if it was just a single bond or if it's multiples required.
Yeah, the language just specifies that they have to just hold one bond, $50,000.
Thank you.
Are there further questions for the reviser? Seeing none. First proponent I have listed is Mr. Don Mcneely, President of the Kansas Automobile Dealers Association. Welcome to the committee.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This is not our bill. This is the division's bill, but I do appear in support of it. We believe that this increase from $30,000 to $50,000 is appropriate. The average price of a used vehicle is now over $21,000. A price of a new vehicle is rapidly approaching $40,000 for an average transaction price. And just a little unofficial survey that I conducted when the Kansas Department of Revenue's Dealers Review Board started looking at this 2 or 3 years ago. Our surrounding states are at $50,000. And this proposal that was brought to the review board was approved by them as an adequate increase. While I'm speaking to Senate Bill 99, I would respectfully request consideration of an amendment, however, to this bill. As members of the committee will remember, I was here a couple of weeks ago on Senate Bill 33, which would allow the movement of the Kansas City Auto Show from Missouri to Kansas, which you so graciously unanimously passed, and then it was passed last week on the House floor, 124 to nothing, sent on to the governor. And my legislative counsel, Mr. Whitney Dameron, just told me the governor signed it this afternoon. There were some mixed signals, however. When we drafted the bill, it was effective upon publishment in the Kansas statute. And we need an amendment changing that effective date to being published in the Kansas Register. As many members know, that if it's effective upon being published in the Kansas statute book, that's July 1. And of course, on the Kansas Register, it's the week that the governor signs it. And it's my understanding that the auto show would like to be held in Kansas the weekend of June 11th and 13th. So when you do consider moving this bill, we'd very much entertain that amendment. We have talked to the chairman. We have talked to the sponsor of Senate Bill 99, the Division of Vehicles. They are okay with that amendment, and we have also talked with the administration. So with that, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions members of the committee may have.
Are there any questions for Mr. Mcneely? Representative Helgerson.
What's the definition from the car dealer? Is it 4 cars?
I think it's selling 5 cars annually, I believe, Representative.
So 5 cars.
Mm-hmm. 5 or 7, the division can answer, but I believe it's 5.
How much is a $50,000 bond cost?
Well,
like $300?
Well, it'll depend upon the applicant, because the applicant's going to be subject to underwriting by the bonding company.
$2,000?
A new car, our members For a $30,000 bond, it's $150. Going to $50,000, we've been told that it would raise it to $250 annually.
So the question earlier by
Right.
was that Leo brought up,
Right.
should a dealer with 4 cars or 5 cars have to post a $50,000 bond as opposed to a dealer that has, that sells 150 cars in a month? Should they all have $50,000 or should the larger dealers have more?
Well, as a division will tell you that there's never been, I've been here 30 years, there's never been a claim made on a new car dealer bond. The bond is the last resort. I mean, you got to burn through all the other assets, et cetera, before you get to the bond. All states in the country, when they regulate the auto dealers, it's 1 bond per dealer license. If Leanne is still on the line, I think she'll tell you that when people hit bonds or consumers go after a dealer's bond, it's when everything else is gone. And usually it's the very small independent dealers that really have no other assets besides the inventory that they do have on their lots.
Representative Ballard.
Now, clarification. I don't know a lot about bonds on the cars, but is that the equivalent to insurance?
Equivalent to?
Having insurance or your liability or?
Yeah, I mean, you can put up a surety bond, or the division will allow you to put up a certificate of deposit in the amount of the bond.
Because your comment was when they can't get anything else, they go after that.
That's usually what happens. Yeah.
So in other words, it would be like the liability or
I think
what you have
the division
worth?
will have to explain how they would make a claim against a dealer's bond and when they do. I mean, I had an individual yesterday call me, and they were directed to me by the Better Business Bureau. They're having a hard time getting a title from a small independent dealer, and I suggested that they contact the Division of Vehicles and make inquiry as to possibly making a claim upon that dealer's surety bond.
Are there any dealers out there that do not have, that are not bonded?
No, you cannot get a Kansas dealer's license, new or used, without a surety bond.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr.
And
Chairman.
as a side note, the industry actually brought this, and Representative Helgerson may remember, Senator Les Donovan, when he chaired the Senate Transportation Committee, he proposed, at that time, I think the bond was $15,000. He proposed taking it to 50, and that's how we got to 30. So, but that was probably 10, 12, 15 years ago.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Representative Proctor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is, if you in 30 years have never seen anybody go after a bond, why do we need to raise the bond?
Well, no, I just say not anyone go after a bond. No franchise new car dealer, to my knowledge, no one's went after their bonds. And I think if there was an issue, there was plenty of assets to address whatever nonconformity would exist.
But it does happen with used dealers from.
That was what we were told by the Division of Vehicles when they brought this to the attention of the Kansas Dealer Review Board. Yes, that they did not believe it was sufficient in amount in terms of the average transaction price that vehicles have grown to.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Representative Del Perdang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think you gave a good idea, or good example there using the clear title. If I can't get a clear title, it's kind of
right.
way out of it. Would it also play into it if I'm subjecting a vehicle to the lemon laws and not getting resolution?
No, because the lemon law has to do with the manufacturer. The dealer is removed from the lemon law. I mean, it's when you exhaust your remedies at the dealer for the number of attempts over, I believe, is a 30-day period. It goes to the manufacturer. That's the manufacturer's liability, responsibility, if you would.
So is this specifically for used vehicles?
No, I mean, it has to do with any vehicle sold by a licensed vehicle dealer.
Okay, so like your example of the clear title, wouldn't that be back to the manufacturer?
No, that would be with the dealer. But again, and Leanne, this being the division's bill, she can bring you the number of numbers and the reasons that people have made claims against various dealers' surety bond. My statement was that the 30 years I've ran the Auto Dealers Association, which our primary membership are the franchise new car and truck dealers, there has not been a claim across on a new car dealer's bond to my knowledge.
If Chairman doesn't mind me, just so that I can understand it my
Right.
own here, when a person purchases a new vehicle, before I receive a clear title, does the dealership I purchased it from, what process happens with the manufacturer as far as clearing that? Do they have to pay off any certain plans? Or,
Well, okay.
in other words, could I
Yeah,
possibly buy a vehicle
well,
and I do not get that?
Well, no, it wouldn't happen on a new vehicle because the new vehicle it's on an MSO. I mean, you do not have a title. You have a manufacturer certificate of origin. That is assigned to you. You go to the county treasurer's office and turn it into a title.
But is there,
It would have to be with a used vehicle in regards to not being able to secure a title from a dealer.
what if I purchase that vehicle though, with the manufacturer's origin certificate, and the dealer I purchased it by for financial reasons couldn't pay off GM or so? Would that prevent me from getting
No.
paperwork?
No. I mean, there's, the dealerships, they floor plan their vehicles. Some dealers may not floor plan their vehicles, but no, there wouldn't be any situation with that.
Thank you.
And like I said, this is more or less a question for the Division of Vehicles because they're the ones that administrate the claims against the surety bonds of their licensed entities.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Next, we have Leanne Phelps, Kansas Department of Revenue. Welcome again.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the House Transportation Committee. Thank you again for the opportunity to present as a proponent on Senate Bill 99. We are seeking to raise the bond amount for licensed vehicle dealers in the state of Kansas from $30,000 to $50,000. I think Mr. Mcneely did a wonderful job of explaining most of the requirements or the questions that you had. We've had claims over the years. I've been involved with dealer licensing for probably 14 of my 15 years at the Division of Vehicles, and it's been a $30,000 bond the whole time I've been there. So it's been, I would say, at least 15 years since there's been a raise to that amount. We've had multiple claims, and of course, it's very reflective of the economy, unfortunately, and typically does involve a used car dealer. I can say that I don't think we have ever had a bond claim that I'm aware of against the new car dealers. So it is just something where a typical scenario would be that a dealer is maybe struggling and they end up closing their business. And before they close their business, maybe don't do a satisfactory job of making sure all those customers that have purchased vehicles from them have received titles. So sometimes we have to step in and try to help. Sometimes the purchaser has to actually go to court and get a judgment against the dealer, and that is a requirement before this bond can be attached. So we do ask, they do have to have a judgment against the dealership, and then they have to tie it to a violation of the Dealer Licensing and Manufacturing Act. So in that act, there are multiple things that are considered violations, and we ask them to tie it to one of those. And then the director makes a decision on how to disperse funds or if to disperse funds. So I'm sure that there are probably a lot of other questions you might have, and I'm happy to answer any.
Other questions for Ms. Phelps? Leanne, you got off lucky.
Wow, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak as a proponent on Senate Bill 99? Seeing none, I have no opponents and no neutral listed. Does anyone wish to speak on either of those? Hearing none, we'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 99. Committee, you've been provided with the committee minutes for January 26th and 28th, and February 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 10th, 11th, 16th, 17th, 18th, and 23rd. Representative Ballard, you make a motion on them?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we accept. It took me by surprise. I thought to say, what? All right. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the committee minutes from those dates mentioned, but if you want me to, I'll say.
No, you don't need to read them all. I just got through them. Seconded by Representative Hoheisel. Is there any discussion? See none? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. Committee, we will be meeting again on March 16th, which is Tuesday, and we'll be looking at final action on Senate Bill 19, 26, 67, 68, 69, 95, and 99. So if you have some amendments that you would like prepared on any of those, you need to get with the reviser. With no further business to come before the committee, we are adjourned.